My name is Ken Sorensen, U.S. Army chaplain, a division chaplain here at Fort Hood, and I'm joining you again with Pastor Doug Listater. And today this time we're addressing the Zion Faith Homes. And Doug, I'm really curious, even though I've read the book and everything else, you lived there. How did the Zion Faith Homes come into existence?
All right. Actually, the term faith homes came about as a result of the Pentecostal outpouring at the beginning of the 20th century.
Okay.
Tracing back to Azusa Street and the work of the Spirit across the country, moved pretty much across the country from California to the east. The Lord did a wonderful thing during that time. And out of that sprung up groups of Christians who wanted to live together, pray together, minister together, send out missionaries together. And they just became generically known as faith homes. And there were several around the country. Most of them, kind of, the excitement wore down after 10 years. After all, you have to still wash dishes, you still have to make meals, you still have to keep the property up, and the thrill of it can kind of fade away. Mm-hmm. The Zion Faith Homes, though, lasted 10 decades at least. Mm-hmm. And it started actually in Toronto, Canada. And a group of believers there who were part of the Lord's working during that time were drawn together through the Lord's Word to rent a home, live together, pray together, worship together. It was a community, but it was more of a family atmosphere that the Lord wanted. And a couple would, live there, and maybe a single man, a single lady. And in the case of the Zion Faith Homes, it turned out to be 13 ministers at the beginning who all worked together, prayed together, ministered together. It was quite wonderful. My book here, The Vast Simplicity, only touches on it because there is another book about the faith homes and its founder called Radiant Glory, The Life of Martha Wing Robinson, which covers the faith home history from that period till about 1935. But it became the Zion Faith Homes became a place of training for ministry. And the faith homes then kind of established itself as a place where God was working to make people know Jesus and take the depth of that knowledge to wherever God would send them. And in that sense, the faith homes was unique because it outlasted most of the other faith homes that I ever heard of that sprung up in the early part of the 20th century.
Now, before we started, taping, you said how there's sort of an intuitive sense in today's church that we're not as deep in today's church as we could be, as the Lord would want us to be, as maybe our souls long for it to be.
Yes.
And yet here at the Zion Faith Homes, there was a depth there, there was a clarity there, there was a hunger there for the Lord.
Yes. In all reality, Ken, Jesus revealed himself in a very wonderful way to the leaders of the Zion Faith Homes. The Pentecostal community, of course, was quite small at the beginning, but out of that emerged people who really had a deep experience with Jesus, including the founders of the faith homes. And because of their willingness to walk what we used to call, when I was a kid, the ministers would talk about the crucified life, or deeper life, or the way of consecration and surrender, not apart from evangelism, but as part of the overall Christian walk. There was established there something that drew people deeper, can we say? You would say the churches, and they are a little bit I would put it this way, they've dumbed down the gospel a little bit. And there it was not dumbed down. As I said in the first interview, I had grown up in those circles, Pentecostal circles, and good, solid Bible teaching and evangelism and outreach. But when I got to the faith homes, it was deeper yet. And that's what drew people. Did you know, Ken, that in a 10-year period, over 30,000 people visited the faith homes?
Yeah, and that was one of my next questions was, how did it operate? How did it function if you had that many visitors to the faith homes?
Well, eventually the Lord moved the faith homes from Toronto, Canada, around 1910. The first meetings were held in Toronto in 1909, then moved essentially to Zion, Illinois in 1910. But the Lord led them to purchase 3 homes. They were all a block apart in the city of Zion. Zion had kind of a religious history anyway, so it was a nice place to establish them. But there were just 3 physically large homes with many bedrooms. I think I counted once, there were 33 bedrooms that we maintained in the 3 homes. So there was room for a lot of visitors, but it was and there were no signs, I should say, no signs out front. It looked like any other home in the community, each of those homes. But people came because the Lord was doing such a wonderful work. And by word of mouth, what Jesus was doing spread. And people heard about, I can get help for this, I'm struggling with that, I need healing perhaps, because there was a lot of divine healing went on in the faith homes, and commissioning of people into the ministry, unusual manifestations of the power of God and the wisdom of God was very much there. And that's what drew people. So in these 3 homes, there would be a house parent, or a couple supervising, and then a level of housekeepers and maintenance people, and then people that were being trained and people that were visiting. And each house functioned as a family. We were not a monastery. You might want to say to them why I said that.
Well, I just used that description because I wanted to say I visited the faith homes, Zion faith homes, for the first time in 1993, and my description then, at least to myself, was a heavenly portal where the presence of God resided, sort of a window or doorway into heaven to go into the faith homes. And I discovered that because when I walked into the faith homes, immediately I wept. I didn't understand why I was weeping there, but I realized that was how my body reacted physically or physiologically to the presence of the Lord. That was there. And that was 1993, 83 years after the faith homes opened. And same thing happened each of my visits there. So just recently, I described it as a Protestant monastery because of the consecration, because of the prayer. That's the only 2 words that came to mind. You didn't like those words.
It put in people's minds, those words, the idea of kind of a exclusive, isolated place. But I want to say again, it was very much a family atmosphere. My wife and I had 2 children we raised there. There were other couples with children. The family atmosphere was encouraged. My children went to public school. We had neighbors we interacted with, and the main building had a church, chapel kind of church. It could seat about 120, and people came to church 4 times a week. We had services on Monday and Thursday, as well as Sunday, and Wednesday night Bible study. So it was not an island by any means. It was mixed in with the community, and we were involved in witnessing and sharing Jesus with people all around us, and happy to do that. But it was monastic in the sense of there was always a commitment. Have you given everything to Jesus? Are you His completely, without reserve? Is there anything you would refuse to do for him? Do you love him enough to reproduce his love in your own life and to pass that on to other people? And that's what got me, Ken. That's what got me. And maybe I can say this in preparation for talking a little bit about this book you have underneath that one called What the Bible Teaches About Mercy. Because all my life, I had been told as a Christian, well, you need to love people, you need to love people. But I had no idea how to do that. But when I got to the faith homes, they did it to me. They showed me the love of Christ and taught me how to live in it. And I learned the value and importance of the word mercy in the Bible. And I realized I was being taught how to love as Jesus loved. I was receiving it from those who had it and gave it to me. And then I was being taught how to do that for other people. And that's what held me, Ken. That's what held me there all those years. I was a restless person. I had no intention of staying in one place for 30 years. But God anchored me in that. And
the drawing power of God's love in the place anchored you there.
That's why I say Jesus doesn't need any hype. We hype him in the churches because we've lost touch enough with him that he's his own hype. He doesn't need us to have smoke and mirrors and lights and action and all kinds of activities to draw people. People were drawn to the faith homes because Jesus was there. And when Jesus is there, nothing is boring, Brother Ken. If church services are boring, it's not Jesus' fault. It's our fault. And I learned that and saw that in the faith home.
It's so biblical because Jesus didn't have a big advertising campaign when he was on the earth. Right? He traveled from city to city with 12 disciples, and the whole towns would come show up.
Leonard Ravenhill used to say to me, Doug, you never have to advertise a fire. People will come if they see a fire. So you have the fire and people will come. And the fire was there, Ken. I'd been taught all my life, you need the baptism of the Holy Ghost, but the fire was left off. Jesus said, baptize you with the Holy Ghost and with fire. John the Baptist said it. The fire was there. And yes, we had a daily life, we had work duties, but the fire was there, and it was nurtured and fed by the fact that all of us in the faith homes, and this people do need to know, all of us were required to spend 2 hours alone with Jesus and the Bible every day for 2 hours.
As having spent time there and just seeing the interaction and the faithfulness, the discipline required, but yet sensing the presence of God, the fact that God was pleased with the activities of the faith homes, pleased with the drawing, and that's where the drawing came in. So how did people, you discussed that a little bit, but it's just hard for me, here in 2014 to think of people being drawn to a place that isn't advertised, that you said there wasn't even a sign out in front, and yet 30,000 people are coming to these 3 homes in the little town of Zion, Illinois.
It's hard to believe and hard to describe because we don't see much of it now. But, as you mentioned earlier, people began following Jesus. And some of it was because of miracles, and there were tremendous miracles in the faith homes. I discuss a few of them in my book. But it was more the reality. People were so hungry for reality. And everything that they read in the Bible in their prayer times seemed to come to life in the faith homes. And I heard messages that were straight from heaven. The first time I heard, for example, Rex Andrews speak, who I give a couple chapters to in my book, I felt like time stood still, and I was listening to a voice out of eternity. It wasn't the splash and the splendor. It was the depth and the quiet presentation of the truth of God that gripped people and drew them back. So it was not unusual to have people coming year after year after year and taking a vacation to be at the faith homes for a week, or ministers that were worn out and said, I always get something when I come to the faith homes that helps me when I go back to my mission work or my ministry work. That's what I'm trying to say in that book, that Jesus is not done with that.
Yeah. I don't believe he's done either. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing these tapes.
That's right.
And the thing, I want to thank you, Pastor Doug, just for what you shared, because it's sort of the thing that always puzzled me, and I'm sure puzzled other folks too, is out of you will flow rivers of living water.
Yes.
And it sounds like you found a place, went to a place where you experienced that and want to share it with others. So thanks for the visit. We're going to pause here and come back next time. Thanks.